Memphis Wrestling with Randy Hill and special guests.
It is a couple of days before Halloween. Spooky, spooky, scary, scary, and yellow again, everybody. It's Randy Helms, and we're here right at you for a very special Halloween Eve edition of Talking Memphis Wrestling, where we will talk wrestling in the 80s, we'll talk wrestling in the 90s, we'll talk about Halloween, we'll talk about anything anybody out there of Team Hales wants to talk about. Right now, the only people I see making comments are people watching from YouTube. The YouTube channels are in force. However, right now, I don't see anybody at all watching from, hey, there he is, Al Tuttle watching from Facebook. Brad B.C. Collins, my man in North Carolina. Al, my man in Georgia. Shane from Facebook in the house, who loves the show, who has given me story ideas in the past forever. He has added great comments, and we proceed. Easy for me to say, we appreciate it. By gosh. Anyway, PJ, the first lady of us, of Talking Memphis Wrestling, we appreciate it very much. Jeremy's here from Evansville, Indiana. PJ here from Thailand. All kinds of folk. I've already said out in Georgia, and we have a big show. As we'll talk a little bit about Halloween, I want to ask co-host Pat Trammell to drop on in here. And Pat, I know this has been ancient times ago in your lifetime, but tell me your first memories of Halloween.
My first memory of Halloween, I was about 5 years old, and a big kid tried to take some of my candy, and my brother, who was 9 years older than me, beat him up. And I told that story at my mother's funeral.
Was that the first time your brother ever beat anybody up for you? Was that the
That's the first time? I think it's the first time he ever beat anybody up but me.
Oh my goodness. Did you beat him up now?
Yeah, but I wouldn't. He's a lot better guy than I am.
I don't know about that. I don't know how you can get any better. Donald says, ha ha. Thomas says, yellow Pat. PJ says, hi Pat. Everybody's saying, Pat. Donald is saying hello from West Memphis, Arkansas. By the way, I ate near there yesterday, Donald, and I forgot the name of the place. Some kind of great hamburger place, something Chack in Marion, Arkansas. Man, that was fantastic. Ran into a wrestling fan in good old Marion, Tennessee. You can't go to the Memphis territory right there in the heart of Memphis and not see Memphis wrestling fans, and that's always a thrill, Pat.
Yes, it is always a thrill. I was taken back by Shane. I think I dress as Exotic Adrian. Shane, that shake you up, Randy?
Yes, go ahead. Move it on.
I have a cultural question for you and for our listeners. I took a glass of water, and when I came on, I was choking a little bit. In Alabama, we would say that went down our Sunday throat. Has anybody ever heard that phrase, that saying?
No.
Okay. Well, it must be an Alabama thing then.
That restaurant is Tacker's. It's the Shake Shack, and it's fantastic. Christian says something up there, and I'll let you read it, Pat.
Saw
Cristobal.
saw an old video of you, Randy, upset about the way you were being treated by the higher ups and Jerry Lawler standing up for you. You were so young, so young.
Remind the people the name of my book, Pat.
Living the dream.
And it's just fantastic. It really is. And I was able to live my dream. I mean, dreams can come true for sure. Dreams can come true. And that's absolutely positive. God bless the USA. Now, Pat, I want Pat to keep us informed on to keep up with the fact. We want to know if there's going to be a sweep tonight in the World Series. What do you think? I personally think the Yankees, because it is a work, the Yankees will pull it out tonight. It's the largest market in the country. They'll pull it out tonight. I'd bet your life savings on it, Pat.
Well, I don't. They sure could sell a whole lot more beer if it would be a work for sure. So Al says no sweep as well.
Yeah,
The Dodgers need to sit Freddie Freeman, who
man,
still
has
should
he
be with
not
the
been
Braves.
fantastic?
Oh my gosh, I cringe every time I see that guy because he was so good with the Braves, so good.
Why did he leave? Money?
Money, and I think he's from out there.
Oh, is that right?
I think, yeah, I think so. But yeah, money has a little bit to do with it. But anyway.
Are you excited about this show today? I guess we should tell people what the show is about. Do you want me to tell people what the show is about, or do you want to tell the people what the show is about?
Well, I'm very excited, and I commented, which I rarely do, on Twitter about this specific show. And what I said, looking forward to tonight, my era. Join us if you can. We dive into the great talk and videos of the 1980s, and in my mind, the beginning of the 1980s is really what made Memphis wrestling.
Oh, it was already made, without a doubt.
Well, but I've got a theory about that.
Okay, go ahead and let's go with that. We're seeing that Michael's going to come on.
Well, let's get into it, and I'll unveil my theory as I go.
We got everybody trying to produce this motherfucker.
I'm not trying to produce it. I've taken my own notes.
Today, we will talk about the 80s, but I wanted to say something about the 70s real quick. And I wanted to ask you, Pat, because we talked about every year in the 70s. I was just thinking, because I think if you look at 1972 Fargo top babyface, 73 Fargo top baby face, probably 74, 75 as well. Who would you say the top baby face in the Tennessee territory was in 1976? I got three.
In the overall Tennessee territory?
The Memphis part of the territory.
In 1973?
No, 1976.
1976. Lawler? No, yeah, Lawler. No, Lawler was ill then, right?
Yes.
Jarrett? Fargo when he was in town.
But he wasn't much.
That's right.
And Jerry Jarrett wasn't wrestling much. Want me to give you mine?
Please.
Mine would be Bill Dundee. Mine would be Tommy Rich.
Right.
Mine would be Rocky the Soulman Johnson.
Solid. Absolutely.
Want to bring in Michael St. John, and I didn't give you the opportunity to have a first take, but you started producing the show, so that can be your first take of the day. Anyway, to do his first take, he probably has the ball game on, watching the ball game as he's wearing the Dodgers. I guess you don't think, or you do think, the Dodgers are going to sweep tonight. What do you think? I think it's a work, and I think there's no way they'll pass up on that money. Unmute.
Stay silent forever. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to stay silent forever. So I think tonight the Yankees come back and we see a little. In fact, I think the Yankees could win the next 2 games and it goes 6. I don't think the Yankees will win the championship, but I think it could go 5 or 6.
What do you think about the performance, especially the first night as with the Grand Slam? What about the job Freddie Freeman's doing?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's any doubt in the room that Freddie Freeman is the most valuable player in this World Series. And and it's so complimentary to the Kirk Gibson thing with the Dodgers. A guy that was hurt wins game number 1, propels him to a World Series victory 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was. And now this guy is hurt. He's playing hurt. You can tell he's hurt, and it doesn't make any difference. He's playing in the World Series. I love guys in baseball. I love sports athletes who play and get paid a lot of money, but still play for the love of the game. And they show their passion and they do it 100% every time they do it. And unfortunately, that is not the case in not only professional sports, but in college sports and in high school sports these days. I'm concerned. My biggest concern with sports right now, Randy, especially on the college football level and college basketball, is that now that players are getting paid by collectives outside the university, how soon will it be, or is it already occurring, where organized crime and organized gambling aficionados are getting to these guys? And I think it was evident in the Alabama-Tennessee game with Jalen Milroe on the overthrows. Just tonight, just a thought, just nothing but a thought. But I think sooner or later, you're going to see gambling. You're going to see gambling interest pop up in quote unquote college sports. Pat doesn't agree with that, do you?
I don't know that I disagree with it. It's a frightening thing to comprehend.
Well, think about it. If you're going to throw a game and you're playing football, what's the easiest way to do it? Overthrow a pass, miss a tackle.
Well, but Michael, would it have been easier to do that when you weren't making $1 million a year?
No, I honestly think the greed factor plays into it. And I think when you are you are 17 years old and they get to you by giving you $300,000 to come to University of blank, and you get there and you're coming from the hood, you've never had anything to speak of. Now all of a sudden, $300,000 is not a whole lot of money in this day and time to people, but to somebody 17 years old coming out of North Miami, it's a whole world. And I think it opens up the world of possibilities that if they're going to pay me $300,000 for this, and a gambler comes up and he's going to give me another $100,000 to throw a game, more money, more money, more money. Wasn't there a movie called that?
This is a message to our mobster friends out there from the mafia. The opinions that were just expressed on this show was those other than mine, Randy Hales, who's here to talk about Memphis wrestling, not the mob and not some kind of illegal shenanigans supposedly going on at all. Is that a way to cover my ass or what? Hey, Dave Channel, what is going on? Dave says Dodgers all the way. Richard, Michael's asked the question, answered this question so many times, but I'll ask him. It's not what this show is about today, as a matter of fact, but you always take us off script. Every week you go in a different direction. I appreciate you being excited about Memphis wrestling. And he wants to know what it was like working for Nick Goulas and the UWA.
Well, Nick had the NWA banner forever and ever. And UWA, I believe, might have been the wrestling group that the Poffos started up in Nashville. That was something, IWF.
That was IWF.
Yeah. As I've always said, I was treated well. I know people like to maybe take shots at that organization, but I can't lie to you, and I'm not going to lie to you. I was treated well by Nick Goulas. I was treated well by Jerry Jarrett. I was treated well by the Poffos. I mean, I don't know. I can't say. I mean, I can't pick one over the other because they were all good to me, and I just tried to do the best I could, whether it was good or not so good. I would still give it my best, and I can assure you that there was never any time that I showed up not ready to work and not willing to do what I was supposed to do and was told to do. So, that's a tough question to answer, but I appreciate the question.
I have a little subject I want to address with Team Hales and Frank Seaton and all our buddies out there, and it's a question that I'm going to ask in different ways to Michael St. John and to Pat Trammell. And I got this idea because I listened as I was Ubering today, listened to Conrad Thompson and Jeff Jarrett's My World podcast, and I thought the edition that I saw today, and I watched the YouTube link or listened to the YouTube link. I wasn't watching, I was listening to the YouTube link because I was driving and I would not do that. I want to make that clear as a bell. I wasn't looking at the screen, I was listening. But a question came up and I thought that it was interesting, and I'm going to switch it up because they were asking, Jeff said basically, Jeff, a viewer had asked in the 70s or 80s, early 80s, or the 60s or whenever, what is the dream match as a fan you would want to see? I'm going to slant it in a different way to Michael St. John, who started watching wrestling in the 60s as a fan, in the 70s as well, and today still a fan. We all are. Is there a match? I don't care if it's a match in the Nick Gulas Inn, if there's a match in the Memphis Inn, a match in Madison Square Garden, or in the Tokyo Dome. It don't matter. In the New Orleans Superdome, in Houston, anywhere else, in the St. Louis Kiel Auditorium, anywhere. Is there, this is how I'm going to slant the question to you, Michael, not on the notes, because I just thought of the dang question today after listening to that. Is there a dream match that you would have liked to be holding this microphone on and doing the play-by-play on in wrestling history? It may be more than one, and that's fine. Hello, Crazy Gal.
As a fan, Randy, and getting into the business, I read so much about Bruno Sammartino and read so much about Luthez, and saw Luthez and actually got to call a match with Luthez. I would love, if you want to say in the same era, and they had to be in the same era, and they matched up together, I would have loved to have seen a Bruno Sammartino match against Luthez. I think that would, back in the day as a wrestling fan, I would have loved to have seen that. I would have loved to have called a Jerry Lawler match against any of the NWA heavyweight champions when Jerry was at his peak. And that goes from everybody from Kaniski to the Funks to the Briscoes. Any of those would have been awesome. But to me, if you want to go back to wrestling the way wrestling was, and I think was meant to be, is I would love to have seen a Jerry Lawler match against any of those kind of guys. But in my heart, I would have loved to have called a Luthez Bruno Sammartino match. I would have loved to have called any match Buddy Rogers. I just finished a book on Buddy Rogers a couple of weeks ago. What an incredible talent he was. And, those are the kind of matches, in this day and time, when I see the people that are holding the belts, not that they're not great wrestlers, but to me, they're better stars. They're better TV stars than they are wrestling stars. Does that make any sense? Not that Dustin or that Cody Rhodes or whoever's got the belt over in AEW is not a good wrestler or maybe even a great wrestler. I see them more as TV figures today than I've ever seen them before.
And the business is making more money than it ever has before as well. Update on the ball game, top of the first, the Dodgers leading 2-0 on the Yankees. Don't know if Freddie Freeman has hit that home run. They're talking about dream of calling a world title match. You mentioned Briscoe and Ray some more. I got a chance to live out that dream by my favorite world champion. I've said it on this show before. It's Nick Bockwinkel. Adam mentioned it on the notes. I think just a classic match. I really enjoyed that as well. As a fan, Pat, or as a wannabe fantasy booker, which match would you like to see going back in time, and what match, fantasy booking, would you like to see?
this is two guys that I loved, and I would have loved to have seen them go an hour Broadway. And I don't know that they ever were in the ring together, but I would have liked to have seen Austin Idol and Buddy Landell go an hour Broadway in their prime and in Buddy's prime, because Buddy Landell to me is one of the more tragic figures in wrestling. I just think he could have been anybody he wanted to be. But I would have loved to have seen that match. I'll tell you what, Shane has a good tag team match there: Lawler and Dundee versus Tully and Arn Anderson. That'd be a great match too.
That is for sure. Guys, keep up, please. Everybody, keep up. Let us be up to date on that score of the ball game. Interesting conversation about that, and it's something we can continue to talk about, Michael.
Just real quick, did I not hear or see or read, maybe on Twitter, that the Dark Side of the Ring is going to do a feature on Buddy Landell? Has anybody else seen or heard that?
I know they're going to do a feature, and it's already recorded on Eddie Gilbert. I don't know about the Buddy Landell thing. I really don't know. And, to tell you the truth, talking about an hour draw, that Pat's idea between Buddy Landell, who has done many hour draws, do you think Austin Idol ever wrestled a single 60-minute draw in your life, Michael? Do you think that ever happened? Because not as I'm aware of.
And knowing him, I wouldn't think it would happen. I don't think he did. I could be wrong, but I don't know every history of every territory. But to me, Austin Idol was a type of wrestler in the ring that when you saw the first 10 minutes, you saw Austin Idol. Not that he wasn't overly creative, not that he wasn't a phenomenal showman and somebody that could sell and could. But Austin Idol was almost like what's the word I'm looking for? An acquired taste that the Memphis territory, and especially, absolutely fell in love with. And he was over in Memphis, and he was over down on the coast with the boys in Mobile and everything. But I don't know if Austin Idol was as big or ever got to that point in any other territory.
I'm not sure he wanted to be.
And you could be right.
I think the story on Idol, and I've heard this from Jerry, was that, he and Randy, you've been around him, and Michael, you may have been too. I mean, he didn't hang out with the boys. He didn't, do much. He came and got his money and took off. And as Adam just pointed out, Billy Corgan does love him. And I think that...
because Idol is a worker and a con man and a bullshitter. That's the reason he's done Con Billy. He's good.
I love how the truth comes out on this show. Man, that just makes the show. That is fantastic. Randy, you guys and Pat, I did a show in Memphis when he was Rick McCord. I mean, before the Austin Idol in incarceration. Or not incarceration, I shouldn't go there. But what's the word I'm looking for? Incarnation.
Yeah.
In Memphis?
Rick McCord was in Memphis. Did he not come through Memphis in 76,
Not that I
77?
remember. He wrestled in New York as Iron Man Mike McCord. But I don't know I thought he debuted here in 1978 in Memphis as Austin Idol.
For some reason, I may have this confused with him, but I thought he wrestled in Memphis as a McCord. Was there another McCord that came through Memphis about that time, Randy?
Rick McCord was here in the 80s, was underneath Babyface.
Okay, that may be who I'm confusing with. Sorry, folks. I love the truth on this program. Truth comes out. I'm telling you. If this could be next Tuesday during the election, we'd all be happy.
Oh, man.
Let's don't go the election route, please. Let's don't touch that with a 10-foot pole. All right. As I want to see what I did with I got some folks. We've been talking baseball, and I will say this. Somebody said that Freeman already has hit a 2-run home run. He's hotter than a firecracker, boys. He's hotter than a firecracker. How about that? Holy cow.
Most valuable player of the series. There's a question up, if you don't mind, Randy, if I can address how many commentators have I worked with throughout the wrestling. In my career, I would say probably 35, 36 different folks as commentators, and more than that as wrestlers sitting in as a sidekick. But worked with some really good ones.
All right, folks, we ready to get in our subject? Because I want to talk, and we're going to get deep in philosophy here, because we are going to talk into the 80s. And we're just going to take our time on this. And for the first time in several weeks, we're going to have video to show to back up some of the things we'll talk about. We'll do that later on in this hour. But we want to tell the story exactly what was going on. And I have to start with 1979. Remember, in 1979, that was the year that started out with Robert Fuller as booking the territory, and then later on, when it went down and down and down and down, Jerry Jarrett took over, and he shot an angle, which was the famous Tupelo concession stand brawl with the Blonde Bombers and Lawler and Dundee. We got some months out of that, and that was interesting as well. And then toward the end of 79, Jerry Lawler broke his leg playing football. And that's probably more toward let me first say, toward the end of 79, I'm getting ahead of myself, Jerry Lawler switched heel, and Jimmy Hart, his buddy, was brought in as his manager. That's how 79 ended and how 1980 started. Jimmy Valiant was a heel during that time period and did matches, main event matches, and TV matches as well, with Jerry Lawler, also Jimmy Hart, managing then. Then the bottom fell out. The bottom fell out because at the end of January, start of February, on a Sunday afternoon in Memphis, Tennessee, Jerry Lawler, playing a flag football game in Memphis, was tackled by referee Jerry Calhoun, as Jerry Jarrett had for months begged Lawler, said, man, this whole company is built around you. If you go, we go. The company's done if you're done. Don't do it. Lawler continued to do it, and he broke his leg. They say, because I wasn't in the office at the time, but they say that's the maddest Jerry Jarrett had ever been. Very hot at Lawler, and went months after month after month, not checking on him, not calling him. He felt his livelihood, Jerry's, as long as for, and also the health of the company and everybody working at the company, had been given a death blow. It was serious life situation. Serious life situation. Now, up to that point, Jerry Lawler, the star in Memphis, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. The greatest crowds in the history of Memphis wrestling, and the entire territory headlined by Jerry Lawler. All of a sudden, with a snap of a leg, in a Sunday flag football game, there was no Jerry Lawler. Pat, I think I'll start with you at this point. At this situation, having had a meeting or two and several phone calls with Jerry Jarrett, knowing how he was, can't you imagine when Jerry Jarrett found out about the broken leg that he was getting dog cussed by Jerry Jarrett?
I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to have been in that room at all. But I mean, in Jerry's defense, yeah. But in Lawler's defense, now how old was Lawler then?
Well, he was
30?
born in 1949. The
So
broken
86,
leg was in
31.
1980.
So 31. You know, everybody thinks they're indestructible at that point, and certainly nobody's had the charmed life Jerry has. So But again, and I don't want to. Well, this is what we're here to unravel. In some ways, for me, this is not the beginning of Memphis wrestling, but this chapter is just such an outstanding uh, case study in how to make lemonade out of lemons.
Now, Bo James has a question. He's asking if we think that it would have been different as far as Jerry Jarrett's mind if Jerry Lawler's injury happened in the ring. Yes, 100% different. Jarrett would have been mad at whatever he always working with. That's what happened there. This entire ceremony or situation we're talking about, Michael, and I apologize. I have the hiccups right now, and that is bad. And so we'll go full screen with you, and let me go get something to drink in a minute. Maybe get rid of those things. What were you hearing at the time? Where were you in 1980, early 80, Michael? And what was the scuttlebutt? Were you inside the office at all during that situation? Here, Michael St. John.
A little bit, yeah, Randy. I was running Kicks 104 and living literally 2 minutes away from Jerry Jarrett and Randy West, and was doing some stuff with Randy. And I'll tell you, there was a pallor over the whole thing, because when Lawler goes down, he breaks his leg. Everybody was like, it was one of those whoa moments. And now what do we do? But I never felt any sense of panic. I always felt that there was a little. It's like any other star athlete. You get $1 million athlete, and or $1 billion athlete, and he's paid all this money to be a professional athlete at a sport, and then he goes out and rides a motorcycle, or he goes out and goes fishing and falls off the end of the boat or something like that. Accidents happen. That's pretty much what it was. Should he have been doing that if he loved it? I mean, it's his life. But I think at that time, and I'm just recalling, I remember talking to Randy West quite a bit about it when we were doing, because they had to come up with things that needed voiceovers, and some things were changed and so forth and so on. So I remember it being a busy couple of weeks there to get things back on track, but never got a sense of panic. And I really think, sometimes when you think about this and where it occurred in the timeline of things, if it didn't even make Memphis wrestling even better, because it wasn't just honed in on one star. All of a sudden you had a bunch of stars in the sky that were, making their mark on Memphis wrestling. So not that we would ever want anybody to have a broken leg, not anywhere near the person that Jerry Lawler was in the business at that time. But, you look back on it, and it may have been a blessing, or may have been an example of where tragedy got you better, made you, a loss made you a better winner. And I sort of look at it that way. And then when Lawler came back, my goodness, the stars in the heavens opened up, because Jerry Lawler ascended into being one of the biggest stars in the business.
One little quick question. You were mentioning in 1980, and we were talking about the morale in the office and the situation. Now, at that point in 1980, because Jerry Jarrett was living, was it on Indian Lake? It was, or where was he living? Because he did not move to Cumberland Hill Drive until 1982. And Randy West, of course, after that moved to. Randy, you're watching. Were you living on Savely in 1980? This has been a wonderful opportunity to have Randy on here today, but he's behind the scenes and don't want to be on the air. But in 1980, Jerry Jarrett was at Indian Lake. He was living next door neighbors to Bobby Bear.
I remember that house, and I moved into the house on Bonita Parkway. Yeah, let me see. We were number 1 in 81. And I was in that house. Because I moved into that house. I was over off of New Shackle Island Road in Hendersonville, living right behind where they built the bypass at that time. we moved into our house in December of 81. And I want to say Jerry Jarrett's house was already there, but I remember going to the Indian Lake house and doing some stuff over there as well. But that period of time, I would really have to do some research back. But I remember going to Randy West's house and recording things.
Randy says you're right. He said that Jarrett moved there in 1981. Randy,
Right.
when did you move to 469 Cumberland Hills Drive? Get that information out. Now, 1982 was the year of that party. Did you go to the world famous party that almost cost Jerry Jarrett his company, the open house? Did you go to that, Michael?
No, I did not. I'm aware of the party, though, and I'm aware of what all happened, but I did not. Okay, Randy moved in 83. Randy, we were doing some tapings at Jerry's house, though, I think before you moved into your house, if I'm not incorrect about that. But anyway, Randy's great. I mean,
As we're waiting for his thing, he moved at 469 in 1983. And now, Adam, if you would put one of the full screen picture of, and yes, as he answers that question, put one of the graphics up there, the pictures up there of the Mid-South Coliseum we used last week, as I want to go through some information as we're slowly going to talk about the year 1980. As again, I said, the first of the year, Jerry Lawler broke his leg in the flag football game and was out until the last Monday of the year in 1980. Jerry Jarrett did not handle Lawler being out very good at all. He had told Jerry Lawler not to play football, concerned the loss of Lawler would result in the possibility of the territory going out of the business. He decided to make Jimmy Hart the center of the territory and gave him the very famous interview, and we'll see that interview in just a few minutes, and then instructed everybody that the entire territory would being built around Jimmy Hart and also built around the First family. He switched handsome Jimmy Valiant babyface later on back heel. Bill Dundee was featured all year long in events drawing 7,000 or 8,000 people, including a main event with Nick Bockwinkel. In the same time, Lawler did a few appearances on the other end, on Nick Dulas's end, because Jerry Jarrett still was not talking to him. The style of the territory changed. He brought Billy Robinson in. Billy Robinson, a classic wrestler, brought him in, and they ended up doing a good house in October of the year 1980. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the main event at the Mid-South Coliseum, drawing 6,382 people, was Billy Robinson against former six-time world heavyweight champion Lou Thesz. Tony Charles was in the territory. The debut of beautiful Bobby Eaton. Rich came back, switched heel, then back babyface, Valiant back and forth. The constant during the entire year was the lead babyface was superstar Bill Dundee, without a doubt in the world. And it all started with that famous promo with Jimmy Hart. Basically, 1980 without Jerry Lawler. Did we tell the story? And let me say this, the last 12 weeks before the end of the era without Lawler, the crowds had dropped down for 12 weeks in a row, 3,000 people or less. It was getting tough. Lawler came back for a few weeks as he started talking to Jerry Jarrett. He booked for a few weeks. That didn't take long. He wrestled a match against Hart that drew about 7,000 people, so it did come up, but it was a one-off. He hurt his leg again, and he was out another 2 or 3 months. Bo had a question, another big question. What if the broke leg happened a few months earlier while Handsome Jimmy and Dundee were out? Both of them were out with hepatitis. That is a big question and a good thing. Without Dundee, if Dundee was the only guy left, no Handsome, no, this will be no Dundee and no Handsome because of hepatitis. Without Lawler, Dundee, and Valiant, Pat Trammell with the territory lasted in 1980.
Michael more eloquently laid out kind of what I was thinking before you accused me of going into business for myself as a producer. I think that overall, what happened when that happened to Lawler, and these are all good questions, but it forced Jerry Jarrett to create, new rivalries. Dundee took over, and it made Bill Dundee a bigger star than ever. So I think it made the territory better ultimately. But yeah, it was a big old mess. And as Bo says, I don't know what you do without Handsome and Dundee. I guess he's calling Eddie Graham and all his pals to get stars coming through on a weekly basis.
What do you think of that scenario, Mike?
I agree with it. I think Pat set it up perfectly. I also think at the time, and I think was in the office a couple of times, because in that during that time, and at Kicks 104, while I was at the radio station, Jerry was interested in the radio business a little bit as well. So we had lots of long discussions about that. But I'll be honest with you. I think Jerry reached out to his allies and got some advice and got some talent, whether it came out of Florida and Eddie Graham, whether it came out of St. Louis through Sam Munchnick. At what point in time, Randy, and I think, and we're getting, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but at some point in time, the NWA moniker disappeared from Memphis wrestling and it became, I want to say CWA first, then USW. I know USWA was later in the 80s, but at some point, I think the NWA moniker disappeared.
The NWA moniker went away in '78 when Jarrett joined the AWA, Vern Gagne's AWA, and they started working with Nick Mockwick. So that had already happened by that point. There was a few times that the NWA World Champion throughout the years was brought back, but that was very rarely.
Gotcha. Because the reason I'm trying to align there is I was about to bring up the AWA, because I think Jerry's friendship and alliance with Vern got some of that talent from up there down in the area. And some of them were one shots and blow offs, but there were other times that they'd come down for several weeks and hope to prop up the card. So I think a lot of that started occurring about that time.
I think probably the most impactful interview, and it starts with Lance with a one shot and bringing Hart out and introducing a new heel. They did not know that the heel that would do the talking would be the center of the territory, and a big reason for saving the territory, and that's Jimmy Hart. This is the famous broken leg, the horse interview from Jimmy Hart right now on Talking Memphis Wrestling. Michael St. John, Pat Trammell, I'm Randy Hales, Adam Dunn producing, and here we go.
Have our first look on championship wrestling at the Iranian Assassin coming up in just a few moments. I did want to get manager Jimmy Hart out here to talk to him a little bit, because I think most of you know, some of you may not know, but I will tell you right now that an unfortunate accident befell Jerry the King Lawler, the world heavyweight champ, in that he
Big news for you today,
Jimmy,
Lance. Some
okay.
big news, baby.
Okay, Jim. In the fact that Lawler did break his leg. He broke both bones about 6 inches below the knee in the right leg, and a major event. Now, I don't think any of us deny, maybe this man will deny, about the tactics that Lawler uses and that sort of thing, but still, he did break his leg. It was an unfortunate thing, and as obviously a great wrestler in the background. We've asked Jimmy, who long before he became the manager, as a matter of fact, was probably Lawler's closest friend and confidant. He was at ringside before he ever became a manager because of his genuine interest in there. We've called him a cheerleader because he's there rooting Lawler on, of course, in the role of manager. He has been more active, if you know what I mean, in the campaign of Lawler, but nobody, I think, is any closer to Jerry. And regardless of what our personal feelings on it, we wanted to go to, so to speak, the horse's mouth and find out from Jerry's closest friend what the conditions of Jerry Lawler and his broken leg, Jimmy.
Are you finally through? Are you through? It's right. Jerry Lawler broke his leg. Big deal, man. Big deal. You know who broke his leg? I'm telling everybody. Jerry Calhoun, baby. Jerry Calhoun broke the man's leg.
Jerry,
But listen, I don't want to talk about that. The future's now.
Come
He's
on,
on you.
Art,
So
you-
listen, don't ever talk about him in front of me again. You understand that? I'm
I
serious.
am not believing what I
Well,
am
I don't
hearing
care whether you
about
want to believe it or not, but this is the future, baby, and Jimmy Hart's here and Jerry Lawler's not, okay? Now I want to talk about some guys that I have in my stable of championship wrestlers, baby.
Okay, let's
This
come
is
out
the
of that
newest
right now.
addition, the Iranian Assassin. You see him? What do you mean?
As there is the famous, what do you do with a horse when it breaks his leg? You shoot him. What did you think about that famous promo that ended up months and months later, sold out the Mid-South Coliseum and every market in this territory, Pat?
I'll tell you what. First thing I want to say is, Reese, we're thinking about you, and hope you're recovering quickly. And I hope that's your H-back surgery is the last one. But we're going to be thinking about you. I think a couple of things. Number one, the best thing that ever happened to Jimmy Hart was Jerry Lawler breaking his leg, because you wouldn't know him in the WWE or anything else without his opportunity to shine in Memphis. But to tell you what that does from a talent standpoint, who on earth is the Iranian Assassin?
Ali Hussein.
Okay, well, he was putting him over. Never heard of him in my life, but that set the stage to draw money for years and years and years.
You know what I think sold that promo? Lance Russell.
Yeah, I was thinking
Lance,
that.
when Jimmy said that, you look at Lance's face, and it was sort of that he completely undersold what Jimmy said. And it was absolute a piece of announcing mastery that shows you how daggum good Lance Russell is, and nobody else can hold a candle to him. And I just thought that point, Lance's reaction just put the exclamation point on what Jimmy Hart was saying.
You know, he didn't sell it like the typical wrestling announcer. You're exactly right. That's 100% right. And just imagine Pat and Michael and our people at Team Hills watching the show. Jimmy Hart had just been in the business for a couple of months at the most. And he was the manager of Jerry Lawler. Now, who do you think, those two, Lawler and Hart, who do you think was doing the talking, Pat Trammell?
What do you mean?
When Jimmy Hart managed Jerry Lawler, who was the talker?
Well, I guess
Who was the
Lawler.
interviews?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lawler
Lawler
before
was
this.
talking. Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
My point is, Lawler gone, Hart was left, Jerry Jarrett had the idea, and he lays out this promo. All of a sudden, here's Hart conflicted. Lawler, his fellow schoolmate, his friend, the guy that got him in the business. Now he's going on Memphis TV and saying the line that Jerry Jarrett told him to say, but he knew that Lawler, the heat would go on Hart. Absolutely. Lawler's smart enough to realize that did not Hart did not obviously do that without permission, but it would a whole lot a year later easier to break Jimmy Hart's jaw in the middle of a wrestling match than it would have been break Jerry Jarrett's jaw. For sure, as Al Tuttle says, did Lawler take out his frustrations on Jarrett not visiting him in the hospital on Hart's jaw? That's what the rumor says. Yeah, that's what the rumor says without a doubt. It's just a very interesting period of time. What do you think? We'll start with Pat first again. The different people that came in and the different styles, because all of a sudden, instead of a brawling territory that pretty much from Fargo to the Greens to the Von Brauners to Jerry and Tojo, everybody else had been a brawling territory. He brought in Tony Charles, classic wrestler. He brought in, of course, Luthez. He brought in Billy Robinson, a great wrestler, a shooter. And Jerry Jarrett was always fascinated by the tough guys, by that sort of thing. He also knew you had to be smart with them, because a lot of times just because somebody was tough didn't mean they could draw a dime, and a lot of times they didn't. But the territory changing, Pat, you see the risk in that happening, but at the same time, you also see he had to try something because he didn't know if Lawler was ever coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, I mean, for all Jerry Jarrett's brilliance, you know, Tony Charles, great wrestler, Billy Robinson, great wrestler, had a legacy of some sort in Memphis. But see you see Jerry uh, stumbling, fumbling, bumbling to try to figure out what to do to fill a house. My view is Hart and Lance held the territory together through all of it, the whole period, until Lawler got back.
Lance always a big part of it, and when Lance wasn't on the TV, you could tell it. And Jimmy Hart. Here's the thing: you'd have to say Jimmy Hart was new, even though he had been Lawler's manager. He didn't do nothing except throw Lawler a chain or trip a heel. You know, he really didn't. And I think that's the beauty of it. Then all of a sudden, the territory was built around him. Absolutely 100% built around him. What do you think in this dire straits that the territory had at that point?
I think you made a great point there, Randy, and I think you're absolutely right. He took a talent, and Jimmy was a talent. I mean, we all knew Jimmy could talk, and he put that talent and he showcased him, and he really let Jimmy be the manager of these boys he'd bring in, and then he brought in, like you say, the classic Greco-Roman style wrestlers. You know, it's like walking into a radio station and you lose your morning man, and your morning man leaves you and he goes to New York. So do you replace him with a guy that is the next guy? Do you replace Coyote McLeod? Do you replace Tom Dooley? Do you replace
Rick Dees?
Rick Dees with another Rick Dees? Never works. You've got to bring in somebody that's different, that will capture the audience, that is willing to work hard, willing to promote himself, willing to work with you and getting him over. And I think it's the same thing in wrestling. I think this is a classic example. You can't replace Lawler with Lawler 2.0. You got to do something different. You got to change as we're going through in Alabama, we got to change the culture of the University of Alabama Crimson Tide. I mean, they got a bad coach? No, it's, we're used to the culture of Nick Saban for the past 14, 15, 16 years. Now, all of a sudden, we got to get used to another guy with another culture. Same way in this event with wrestling. Lawler goes down. You can't replace him with Lawler 2.0. You got to build something new, and that's the genius of Jerry Jarrett coming through.
I think absolutely no doubt about that. And we're going to kind of switch and just show different things that Jerry Jarrett did. And one of the things he did, he's brought Tommy Rich, a top babyface that left for Atlanta. in 1977, and this, of course, is 1980. Rich had been gone and became the hottest babyface in the world. He came back and he was switched heel. I wish we would have had this classic video, but we don't. Jerry Lawler was doing commentary. He was back with the fold, and Tommy Rich saying, the reason I went to Atlanta and moved away from my hometown is I couldn't get main events because I had no good Jerry Lawler. Then he bullied and pushed Lawler around. Tried to get heat on Tommy Rich. And then it really didn't draw. And it was a situation that Tommy Rich was a heel. And this, we've watched this before, a beautiful interview with Peggy Rich, the mother of Tommy Rich, Tojo Yamamoto, Handsome Jimmy Valiant, the switching babyface. This is a classic memories. And this is a situation, well, Rich switching heel didn't work. We need a personal issue. We need to do this and limp along and put Dundee and Rich together as a team. And we got Lawler coming back at the end of the year. So this is Peggy Rich in 1980.
It's an unusual situation. I understand completely your request of Eddie to have the opportunity to come out here. And I would like to ask the studio audience, regardless of what you feel about Tommy personally, please show the courtesy to listen to a mother as if it were your own mother. And so, Peggy, we're delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Lance. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for having me out and letting me try to get across to the people that I do have a problem. Tommy's not the bad guy that he appears to be. I know that Tommy is in the dressing room and is probably seeing me, and it's quite embarrassing to him, I'm sure. But you listen hard, Tommy. It's been rough for me. I was proud of you. I'm still proud of you, and these people are too. I'd like to just give you a little rundown on Tommy's career. He started out in Jerry Jarrett's basement, and it was a hard road for Tommy, and he wanted to be accepted. He wanted to be a star, and I thought he was. Well, one day he came in and he said, Mama, the time has come that I think I've got to leave. He said, I need to go other territories and make a name for myself. And then when I come back home, the people here will realize I'm a star. So he left. He went to Atlanta, and it was one of the saddest days of my life. I went to Atlanta many times and saw him, and he wrestled in Atlanta. He wrestled in Madison Square Garden. He went to Hawaii. He's been everywhere. Then one day he called me and he said, Mama, I'm ready to come home. And I was, needless to say, I was proud.
I know you were.
It was really a boost to me. He came back, and the first week he was back, he came to Memphis and wrestled. I didn't come. But he came home, and he wasn't the same Tommy. He sat around, he moped, he was despondent. This went on for 2 or 3 days. And finally one night I sat down and I said, Tommy, what's wrong? I said, there's something wrong, and I think we need to talk about this. And he said, Mama, I'm not accepted. He said, I went away. I thought I made a name for myself. He said, I came back home, and he said, the people didn't like me. He said, I wasn't what they wanted. And I tried to talk to him, and it didn't seem to do any good at all. And he said, one way or the other, Mama, they're going to accept me. They're going to know that Tommy Rich is back. And I want all the people to know when he comes out here and he brags about being the tough guy, and he's not that. That's not Tommy, not at all. And I feel like the only way that Tommy can ever know that he is accepted is by the fans wanting, cheering him, and letting him know they're behind him. That's the only way I know that Tommy will ever be what Tommy used to be. And I think the fans know that we want Tommy.
Wait a minute, save it for later, brother. He has no business being here. Tommy Rich has no business being here. As for nothing, lad, you shut up, Daddy, and you shut up, too, baby.
Come on, Tommy. Come on, you guys. Break it up. Get it separated, Gojo. Hey, yeah. Come on, Jim. Okay, there's no excuse in that now.
Stay over! Stay over!
Watch it, Peggy. Here. Come on, just stay back. Come on, Mojo, come on, let's just get on out of here. Get him out of here, Bill. Yeah. Get him on out of here. No excuse. Okay. See if you can get Peggy on out of here. We'll get somebody else here. They'll get Tommy out.
What happened to him? Where the hell was y'all at when I needed y'all, man?
Okay, Tommy. Hey, get him back in the back now. Go get the face taken care of. All right. Come on.
Come on here. I've worked my brains out for you, man. I've worked myself to death for you. You're the son of the heavyweight champion talking to me. You made a fool out of yourself because you let your own fat mother do it, man.
Let me tell you something, man.
Come on.
Don't you ever, and I mean don't you ever, Hart, say nothing about my mama again, brother. And as far as I'm concerned, Daddy, we're through, Jack.
Let's go. Hey.
Don't you dare do it, man. You made your choice. You want to be with scum like that, Jack? Well, you be with scum.
Tommy, go get it cleaned up. Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's just take a break here, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Yeah, just never mind. Just take a break.
Bo James posted a comment, and I have heard this before. In Handsome Jimmy Valiant's career, this is the only angle Handsome Jimmy ever questioned, and it was because of Peggy Rich. He thought it was too heavy, and he thought it was too much. And the angle didn't draw, but it set up what was next. It set up what was next. So it made sense. It was heavy. Blood on TV, a wrestler putting his hand on a older lady. The whole thing was heavy. And just because something doesn't draw the next Monday night doesn't mean that it wasn't the right thing to do, because you get heat on that. That was tremendous. And we'll start with Michael, then go to Pat, because I've been starting with Pat and going with Michael, and we'll be fair and go with Michael and then go with Pat. Here we go.
You know, for the day and time, I think you're absolutely right, Randy. It was a very heavy angle. It was an angle that I think Jerry needed to shoot because he needed to take Tommy in a different direction. He wasn't drawing any money as a heel, put him back as a babyface. But my point to you, did Tommy Rich ever draw the money in Memphis wrestling that he drew in Atlanta? And I don't think that's the case. And I love Tommy Rich. He's one of my favorite people to ever work with. But I don't think he ever drew the money in Memphis or on this side of the territory, even in Nashville, that he did in Atlanta because of the national exposure.
I would say that when he was programmed in 76, the 6 weeks, the hair stuff and everything that went on, I'm thinking that every town in this territory, he and Lawler sold out. So he did draw here. He was positioned. When he was on top, he was positioned against Lawler because Lawler was the main event plus others.
Right.
Every week. He left to go to Georgia for a reason. He saw they were going with Dundee as the lead babyface. I guarantee you that's the reason. Tommy Rich just drew all kinds of money for several years in Atlanta. So I think you're right on that. I think you're right.
The thing about Tommy too is that I think at that time I think they really showcased his looks in Atlanta, and you had Flair over there, the pretty boy. I mean, and the girls loved Tommy Rich. I mean, there was no doubt about it. He was a lady. Well, I won't say he was a ladies' man because I don't know that personally, like Ric Flair, but I do know that the girls were all about Tommy's looks.
Hey, let's throw this in too, that as a heel in 86, 87, 88, and then into the 90s, Tommy Rich drew a lot of money as a heel. A lot of money. The typical babyface golden boy, the voice or the face of TBS Wrestling, Turner Wrestling, Georgia Championship Wrestling, drew money as a heel big time here. Your comments were great, Michael. Did you want to say something else before we shoot it to Pat?
All I wanted to say is a great comment from Shane Odom. He said Tommy Rich is to Memphis Wrestling as Shawn Michaels is to the WWE. I don't disagree with that.
Bo says Tommy drew money in Knoxville as well, and he did. Pat, what do you think about the video, about our conversation piece here, everything we're talking about?
I've got an interesting take on it because I saw Tommy in Atlanta. That was kind of the heyday in Atlanta, and I can tell you this: he was the thing that I could equate it to in Memphis. He was over like the Fantastics were. I'll tell you this. I think I've made this comment before. The first Atlanta used to run Talladega, or it ran Talladega, and I was the kid with the keys, and we had a high school that is built differently, and the gym is in the middle of the round school, and we seated 2,400 people, which is not a dang bad crowd for a spot show on a Friday night. When Tommy came was the first time that I was involved, and I was the kid with the keys, so I let everybody in, and that's where I met Tommy. That place was packed. It was standing room only on a Friday night in Talladega, Alabama. We had people coming from 3 counties. I got the great idea that I could run some spot shows, and Tommy never came back, and I never drew over 300 people. But he was as big in Atlanta for a 6-month period as anybody has ever been.
I think that's absolutely fair. I think it's 100% fair. So all is being built to a climax, and so they knew that Jerry Lawler would come back, and they knew the date they scheduled to come back was December the 29th. He started getting other people. Jerry Jarrett started, pronoun spouse, started getting other people to come in. Now, December 29th, I'll tell you that main event, but then I want to give you example that after that, and we will switch to the year 1981 real quick, and sorry for this, folks, as we're trying to get to that. So the first Monday night in January, the crowd dropped somewhat because the week before, Lawler's return sold out the Mid-South Coliseum. The very next week, January the 5th, 1981, it drew 6,600 people, and it was Lawler versus Paul Ellering, as Lawler received a match afterwards with Jimmy Hart and a mystery partner. Then Lawler beat Jimmy Valiant and Jimmy Hart in a handicap match. On January the 12th, 6,000 people, Lawler pinned Austin Idol. January the 18th, drawing 9,000 people. Going back to the 1978 opponent, Joe LeDuc, by disqualification, defeated Jerry Lawler. January the 26th, Lawler beat Ron Bass, 6,000 people. No attendance for February the 2nd. Lawler beat Austin Idol on that. On February the 9th, drawing over 9,000 people, Jerry Lawler, by disqualification, defeated Hulk Hogan in 1428 by a disqualification. And then in February the 24th, Jerry Lawler and Jackie Fargo defeated Austin Idol and Dutch Mantel. It goes on and on and on. Lawler, Fargo, and Roughhouse Fargo against Jimmy Hart, Austin Idol, and Dutch Mantel. Lawler Valiant, Lawler Jack Briscoe, Lawler and Rich against Anita and Fucci. Then we had Lawler and Dory Funk Jr., Lawler and Plowboy Frazier versus Terry and Dory Funk Jr., Lawler and Kevin Sullivan in action, and it went on and on and on as 1981 basically was the return of Jerry Lawler at the end of 80, and then building that and building the Jimmy Hart Lawler feud. The King was back, and that's the next video we will see. And this is just awesome, awesome stuff. They built in 1 week a mask wrestler called the Dream Machine, brought to you by Jimmy Hart, that nobody saw till the week before. Daddy wrestled Carl Fergie, Jerry Lawler's cousin, beat him up afterwards. Lawler was in attendance. He came out and they got in a little scuffle. That set up the Mid-South Coliseum sellout and the return of the King. Jerry Lawler returns to Memphis, and this is tremendous. Pat Trammell, Michael St. John, Randy Hills, and Adam Dunn with you for Talking Memphis Wrestling. Let's watch. December 29th, 1980. Listen to the reaction of the people, Pat. Watch how this goes. Rough. Let's not look produced. You hear about Jack Crawford. This is no music for the heel. The Dream Machine. They had just saw once before, Pat. And they walked through the ring at a sold-out Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, Tennessee. Listen to the people blow, Pat. I love the behind-the-scenes stuff you hear from Lance. Yankees hit a grand slam. They're winning 5-2 in the third. Maybe there's hope in the Big Apple. Listen to the people. I'm going to be quiet here. Listen to the people. Hero comes back to save the world, PJ says. How about this, Pat? Do you have chills?
I'm sitting here just. How do you get that over? How do you get an entire city over? It's incredible.
Absolutely incredible. The back and forth. Al, that wasn't Miss Lily. That was a lady that came with her husband that sat right behind the announcer's table. Miss Watnick or Miss Myers, one or the other.
Interesting how Lawler's working this match as we're watching. I know we're seeing highlights, but boy, he looks like he's in top-notch form.
And obviously, he had been out of the ring for a long time, Michael.
Absolutely. I think it speaks to the quality of the athlete he is.
We had to mute the music because of potential copywriting, but this was, as far as I know, before Ric Flair used that music.
It was.
Lawler, as his patented comeback, taking these punches, and look how Lawler could sell. There comes that strap, the Dream Machine begging off. We've seen. Go ahead.
When he pulled the strap down, I realized he is a little out of shape here. He's a little punchy. I didn't realize that until he pulled the strap down.
I've noticed that he's not as defined as he generally is he?
And does Jerry? He never has worked out, but has he lifted weights at some point? Because he had a pretty defined physique all his career.
As he gets the win here, and as far as I know, maybe later in life he did for health reasons, but no, he did not. As now the stipulations, if Lawler won, he would be able to get 5 minutes with Jimmy Hart. And there you go.
Thomas Lamond, out with you. I miss the dream too.
Is that the punch that broke his jaw?
No, I don't think that happened the first week. Beating the hell out of him, though, and gets the 1-2 and stopped at the 2 count and continues the beating. And Lawler no-sells the chair. Jarrett Smart there, don't go traditional heat on a first-time match. Lawler just coming back, so Lawler is treated like Superman, as he should have, Michael.
Absolutely. The perfect way of bringing him back. So apparently the jaw was broken at a spot show. Randy West putting that in there. I did not realize that.
And it might have been in Blauville. Do you remember Randy? Randy West? I think I'm right on that, but I could be wrong. And that was just a tremendous, tremendous thing. Michael, you missed the first part of that, but just a tremendous thing. And it capped the year, and the territory had survived. Yay! I'm so happy.
I have seen the beginning of that many times, Randy, and it is incredible, the reaction there. I could hear you what's coming back downstairs, but here's textbook. How do you bring a star back? A star that's been missing in action. How do you bring him back? This is textbook.
Textbook for sure, as Reese Lewis says. What a comeback. And I think that I will tell you again, for 12 weeks in a row, the crowds were 3,000 people or less. This was a sellout of 11,000. Let's put that Mid-South Coliseum picture up there as I read this card for December the 29th, 1980, the Return of the King. The opening match, Rick Morton and Sonny King against Tojo Yamamoto and Gypsy Joe. Tommy Gilbert against the French Angel Frank Morel. Tony Charles against Wild Bill Irwin. Handsome Jimmy Valiant against 2000. Both of these guys, Handsome Jimmy Valiant and Cousin Carl Fergie, both 2024 members of the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And then everybody you had just saw battled in a 10-man tag team match. Then the sixth match of the night was a Southern Tag Team Championship loser leave town match. The tag team of Stomper Guy Mitchell and Nature Boy Roger Kirby against the tag team reunited of Superstar Bill Dundee and Tommy Wildfire Rich. Then the seventh match was Jerry Lawler against the Dream Machine against Lawler's return to action. And because he won the match, he got that single match with Jimmy Hart at a sold-out Mid-South Coliseum. What do you think about that card? And do you agree one match, or if you count the Hart-Lawler match, two matches, the one match, Lawler and Dream Machine, with the possibility Lawler would face Jimmy Hart if he won the match. That's what, as good as everything else was, Pat, what drew the house?
That absolutely drew the house, no question about it. And I would say the match that could be probably drew half the house. If he wins, he gets Hart. That drew half the house. I think somebody said that. Yeah, Shane, as a fan, it was satisfying to see Lawler get his hands on Jimmy Hart. Everybody, I mean, I don't think anybody forgets, but you know, the hatred that Hart had built up among the fans, I think intensified as Lawler was getting closer and closer and closer to coming back.
What did you think about that card, Michael St. John?
Well, first of all, any card that leads off with Tojo Yamamoto and Gypsy Joe is going to be a fight when the card begins. So I'm sure it got the crowd pretty frenzied from the get-go. But I think you're right. I think Pat is right on target. I think people came to see Jimmy Hart get his comeuppance, hedging their bets that it's Lawler's return. This is going to be his first chance to get back at him. We're going to get there because I just know in my heart that Lawler is not going to be denied. And sure enough, it paid off for the fans. So, again, excellent piece of booking.
Now, I guess 1981, pretty much the entire year.
I'm sorry, Dave. That's funny. Go ahead, Randy. I'm sorry.
I forgot my point.
I'm sorry.
The whole year, no, that's okay. The year 1981 was to promote Lawler against the First Family. That's what the entire year was, no doubt about it. Last week, Michael, you missed the show last week, but what we did, we returned to the 70s and starting with 1971 all the way to 1979, I did year to year to year to year. And so I'm going to do that with the 80s. Probably the most significant year that defined what people think was Memphis wrestling was the 80s. And we're just going to take our time. We're selling information and we're not selling time. And we want people to realize, have time to think about and look forward to next week. And next week, very interesting stuff we have planned. We are going to talk about the first major issue, the first major program of 1982 was different for the Memphis territory. It's the feud between Jerry Lawler and Dutch Mantell. And we will see a brawl that was on TV, and we will see the second part, the finish of a classic barbed wire match in 82 with Jerry Lawler and Dutch Mantell. What else happened in 1982? How about this one, Pat? April 5th, 1982, the debut of Andy Kaufman against Jerry Lawler.
All right.
That's a big thing in April. We also saw Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk, a classic no disqualification match. We'll see that next week. Also, we will see the classic empty Coliseum match between Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk. What else happened in that year? Well, not much. How about the debut of Kamala, a monster heel? That's great. And Michael St. John's voice, and we will show that video next week. In June, Kamala debut. What else that year? Let's see. Was there anything else in the year 82? The fabulous Jackie Fargo did a little interview.
Yeah. Something about Randy Hale, maybe?
No, nothing to do with Randy Hales at all. Nothing to do with me at all. It was in 1982. Jackie Fargo did a interview. Corporal Porter
Passing the torch.
and he absolutely gives it up where I was going, as Jackie Fargo did an interview to give birth to the fabulous ones, Stan Lane and Steve Kern. That was 1982, Michael.
That was a great year. That was an awesome year for professional wrestling, an awesome year. And I think a year that sort of defined, Memphis wrestling on a roll. Lawler comes back, and then 82 pops. And I think you're right, Randy. I think that was a defining year in Memphis wrestling.
Shane says that Frank Morrell choose to be a referee because his career was over. Basically, I think it was just a decision from Jerry Jarrett thinking that his career was over and it would be easier for Frank, and Frank had value. He had value driving up down the roads with Jeff Jarrett and with me, the veterans aspect in there. And I'm not saying that Frank was the best referee in the world, but he was a great presence in the dressing room for sure. There's probably, Dave, 5 Tupelo concession stand brawls. The one that drew the most money, obviously, was the Blind Bombers and Lawler and Dundee. Why did it drew the most money? Was it the best brawl? No, it wasn't. Was it first? Absolutely. That's what it was. So I think pretty much we are going to end here because 82 had so much happen in it. I don't want to start the year. Do you agree with me, Pat and Michael? I don't want to start the year. We're going to start taking our time. It's not going to be a hard, fast 2-hour show. If we can get the show in an hour and a half and we feel that we can tease it, and I can tease it by saying we just told you what happens in 82, and we'll cover that next week for sure, and it gives me a week to work on videos and other stuff. I think videos done right, and with a few of them, there's more impact, and so that's what we're going to do. So what did you learn today, Pat Trammell, and your thoughts on next week's show?
Well, my thoughts is I really like the pace, as you said, but a deep dive into you look at history you look backwards into history, but improperly handled, me and you and Michael and Dave and Julie and Gail and Shane and Al and all of our friends might not be here. They may not have been a Memphis wrestling. The injury of Jerry Lawler was that big, and handling it appropriately brought Memphis wrestling back bigger and better than ever.
Michael, your comment?
My comment is, where's that music coming from? I'm all of a sudden, is Adam doing that? I'm hearing music in my background here.
Yes, he's been doing that the last several weeks. We have a new version 2 of Restream, and so did it throw you off?
It did. I was looking all over my computers because I'm keeping up with our feed on Twitter on this other computer, and then I'm watching. And then I hear the music. I'm like, what did I do? So anyway, hey, no, I actually, Randy, and I think you and I talked about this. I know Pat and I talked about this. I love the pace of this show better now, because I think it's sometimes you have to give more attention to what we're talking about to make the point across and to get people to absorb what is being said. Because now we're in an era, especially with Memphis wrestling, that really is tantamount to creating the aura of what Memphis wrestling is and has become. And I've said it before on this show, I think Memphis wrestling right now in the United States and around the world is bigger than it ever was, because it's a throwback to the way wrestling was. And I think there's an awful lot of fans of wrestling that are a little bit disoriented or disappointed in the way wrestling has gone. And I think this is a mainstay of going back and talking about the days of what Memphis wrestling was to professional wrestling as a whole. So I love this pace, and I think you're doing a great job, Randy and Adam, of producing this show. And just thanks for having me along. And I know I love having Pat along, because that gives us a whole new perspective from a fan standpoint. And hey, I love it. I miss Coach, but I love it.
What is your plans and Joshua's plans for Halloween night? Tell us.
Oh my goodness. The never-ending Halloween saga, I think, started last weekend with his Halloween play. And then tomorrow, Melanie does a thing in her barn every year. She's done it every year that she's had horses. And she does a thing where she dresses up the horses, and there's a trick-or-treating at the barn. And she does this big cookout, and her food is incredible. And I'll gain about 4 pounds tomorrow. So we got that tomorrow. He's trick-or-treating in about 20 different locales on Halloween. He comes to me last night. He says, Papa, I want you to take me trick-or-treating here. I went, here at the house? He said, no, around here, meaning our neighborhood. So he's getting to that age where he knows the good stuff and where to go for the good stuff. So it's sort of funny. So Papa's going to be a little bit busy tomorrow and on Thursday. And, of course, we end our regular high school football season on Friday with a trip to Priceville. And, Pat, you'll love this. The first round draw in the playoffs for the Arabian Nights are the team known as Hoover East in Birmingham, Alabama, better known as the Moody Blue Devils.
Okay.
And they're really good at recruiting, and they've taken a page out of the Thompson and Hoover playbook. So still a couple of more weeks of that, but having a great time, and just honored to be here each and every week that I possibly can.
Adam, go ahead and put the Halloween graphic picture up for about 7 seconds, then come back to us, okay? Put that up there in about 7 seconds, come back to us, and you can see on the backstage area when I'm ready, Michael or Adam. So go ahead and put that picture up. Randy Ells has left the building. I am the Memphis Wrestling Monster. For Adam Don, for Pat Promo, for Michael St. John, this is the Monster. This is Randy Hills. Is the hell out of here. Good night. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Talking Memphis Wrestling with Randy Hill and special guest